Hey, what's up guys? In this quick video, I'm going to show you how to use metadata in Godot. Now we're going to look into how to add it and set it, and then also discuss some common and a bit more advanced topics on how to actually utilize metadata. All right, so what is metadata? So metadata is essentially adding any number of properties to a node without having to attach a script to it. So if I click on my world here and just go to the inspector panel on the right-hand side, if I scroll down to the very bottom, you can see that I have a metadata tab. Now, if I click on this, I can now name the metadata that I want to attach to this object and also set the type of it. So I can do a string, an int, a float, even a resource or a node path. But for this example, I'm just going to name my metadata example and make it a string. Once I click add, it's going to register it onto the object's properties, and then I can basically just edit the value. So we're going to assign it to testing metadata. Now, in order to actually access the metadata, I have to use a special function. So I'm going to go onto the world, which is where the metadata is contained. And on the script for this world, when we start the game, I'm just going to set the label dot text, and we're going to set it equal to get underscore meta. And then for this get meta function, all you have to do is type in the string name of the meta key you want to access. So if I hover over this metadata, right click and copy property path, I can simply paste the property path inside of here, and you can see that our metadata is just called example. Now get meta is automatically going to put the metadata path in front of this. So all we have to do is type the string example, and that's going to get our metadata for the example key. So if we run the game, you can see that the label updated to display the correct value. Now there's also a couple other functions. If you wanted to check if we even have that metadata, you could write something like if has underscore meta, and then you would type in example just like we did before. And now we are only going to set the text of the label if we have that metadata. And then if you'd like to actually set metadata, you can say set underscore meta, and then simply pass in the name of the metadata which you like to set. In this case, we could do example and then the value. So for this one, I'm just going to put in new value. And now if we run the game from here and go to the remote tab, click on the world, scroll down, you can see that we have the metadata, and it now has the new value. You can also add metadata this way. So if you wanted to maybe give this object a bit more metadata, you could type in your new key. So we can do example underscore 2, and then we could set the new value to something like 10. And then when we run the game now, if we look at the remote tab for this world object, you can see that we now have two different metadata entries, and they have two different values. So now that you know how to actually set up metadata, you might be asking yourself, why would you actually want to use it? And the main reason I would use metadata is maybe to add a property to a node that I don't want to attach a script to. And then there's one more topic that I'd like to discuss, and this is something I actually see people ask quite a bit, and it is why use metadata over groups. Now the answer is actually really simple, and it's because metadata and groups are not the same thing, like at all. So let's make an example here. Let's say I had a few different objects. I'm going to just do the classic Godot icon for this example, and let's say that I had three different materials in my game. This first material could be like a dark gray, and this could be like a metal that you could walk on. Second material could be like water. Third material could be grass. So let's give this a bit of a green color. And essentially the goal is I want whenever the player walks on top of these objects, the player is going to have a different friction value and play a different sound effect. Now you could also do a lot more with this, like particle effects and everything, and basically change the game state. But in this case, we just want to know from the player which object we are standing on. Now, if you were to use the groups workflow for this problem, you'd essentially have to go to the metals object, go to the group, and add a new group. We're going to call it metal. And then you'd have to go to the water object, add a new water group, go to the grass, add a new grass group. And this gets very complicated very fast, because essentially what we have to do then is from the player, let's say we accessed the sprite. So we said var object, and the object is our sprite. And for now, we're just going to keep it like this. Now, essentially what you'd have to do for groups is you'd have to basically compare if the object is in group. So we'd have to say like if object dot is in group, and we check if it's in the grass group. If that's the case, then we'd basically set do grass stuff, right? This is obviously not proper syntax. Then we just have to say elif it is object is in group metal. We'll add the colons here, and you can see how this gets really complicated really fast. Not only do we have to basically type out a whole if else statement, but we basically have to have a separate group for every material. And if we add more materials in the future, then it gets very messy very quickly. Now, this is a prime example of where you'd want to use metadata over groups, because with metadata, I could go to my sprite, go to the metadata tab, and just add a new entry called material. And then this could be a string, and we could simply say grass. And then I could add this entry for all of my objects. And then all I'd have to say for this logic is if object.has underscore meta, and we're looking for the material metadata. If that is the case, then we're going to say match object.get meta. We're looking for the material once again. And then from here, we can simply branch out the logic by saying if the metadata matches our grass value, then we do grass stuff. If the metadata matched our metal value, then we would continue and do the rest of the materials that way. So in this case, using metadata is a lot more efficient, and you kind of have to look out for these different patterns when you are designing systems like this for your game, because in this case, metadata is obviously a lot more useful than using groups. Now, metadata is still kind of seen as like a feature that some people don't really use, some people use it a ton, and it kind of is up to you on how you want to utilize it in your specific game. But if you do have any like specific ways that you use metadata, be sure to leave them in the comments. And this way you can kind of share with the community, and you can also open our eyes to any unique ways that you might have. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing, as it is free after all. And if you want to join the Discord server or check out any of the links in the description or on my YouTube profile, be sure to do that. And I also stream on Twitch every now and then, so if you want to stop by and watch some game development, the link for that is also in the channel bio. But anyways, thanks for watching the video. I hope you learned something new, and I will see you guys in the next one.